When genuine street toughness meets something beyond human comprehension, the results can be traumatizing. You're about to witness the moment when Hollywood's most authentically dangerous man discovered that all his real-life violence experience meant nothing against capabilities that operated in territories beyond anything the streets had ever taught him. Subscribe to discover more untold stories of when legitimate danger met supernatural mastery and got destroyed in ways that redefined what authentic menace actually looks like. The cigarette trembled between Charles Bronson's lips as he backed away from the MGM soundstage timing equipment, his eyes wide with the kind of primal fear that he had spent his entire life learning to inflict on others but had never experienced himself. At 49 years old and universally recognized as Hollywood's most authentically dangerous performer, Bronson had just witnessed something that challenged everything he understood about violence, menace, and what it meant to be genuinely lethal in a world where most people only played at being tough. What had just happened on that October afternoon in 1970 wasn't just an impossible demonstration of speed. It was the moment when Hollywood's most legitimate tough guy discovered that authentic street danger could be made to look like amateur fumbling by someone who operated in realms that existed beyond violence, beyond intimidation, beyond anything that could be learned through real-world experience with genuine menace. Sammy Davis Jr., at 45 years old, calmly adjusted his tie and looked at the traumatized Bronson with an expression that mixed genuine sympathy with the quiet understanding of someone who had just provided the most devastating education in authentic capability that anyone in entertainment had ever received. This is the untold story of the day when legitimate street toughness met supernatural mastery, when authentic violence encountered transcendent capability, and when 0.10 seconds redefined what genuine danger looked like when it operated beyond the boundaries of human experience and entered territory that belonged in nightmares rather than reality. October 1970 at MGM Studios represented Charles Bronson at the absolute peak of his reputation as Hollywood's most authentically dangerous performer. At 49, he had earned recognition not just as an actor who played tough guys convincingly, but as someone whose personal background included genuine experience with violence, intimidation, and the kind of real-world danger that most entertainers could only simulate through acting technique. Bronson's approach to toughness wasn't based on systematic preparation or methodical character development. It was rooted in legitimate street experience that had taught him how genuine violence actually worked. He had grown up in poverty, worked dangerous jobs, and survived situations that had required authentic capability to handle real threats from people who weren't acting. Which is why he was so dismissive of entertainers whose reputations were based on charm, talent, or entertainment value rather than genuine experience with authentic danger and real-world violence. The confrontation began during preparation for an action thriller project that would require several major stars to portray characters involved in serious criminal violence. Bronson had been recruited specifically for his reputation as someone who could bring authentic menace to roles that required genuine intimidation rather than theatrical approximation. The problem with most people in this business, Bronson was explaining to a group of studio executives, directors, and stunt coordinators, is that they confuse entertainment with reality. They think being able to sing, dance, or tell jokes makes them tough, but when it comes to authentic danger, real violence, genuine intimidation, they're just entertainers playing dress-up. His commentary was delivered with the quiet authority of someone whose personal experience included situations where performance wasn't enough, where genuine capability was required for survival, and where the difference between authentic and simulated toughness could be a matter of life and death. Real danger, Bronson continued, doesn't come from studying techniques or developing systematic approaches. It comes from experience with genuine violence, from situations where you either handle yourself or you get handled. Most performers have never been tested like that. Sammy was nearby, reviewing script changes with the production team. But Bronson's commentary was clearly intended to be overheard and to establish hierarchies of authenticity that placed legitimate tough guys above entertainers in terms of genuine capability and real-world credibility. I mean, look at someone like Sammy, Bronson said, raising his voice slightly to ensure his target could hear the assessment. Tremendous entertainer, No question about that. Professional competence, natural charm, obvious talent. But when it comes to authentic intimidation, real menace, genuine danger, we're talking about completely different categories of human experience. Sammy looked up from his script, recognizing Bronson's deliberate provocation, and walked over to where Bronson was holding court with his audience of industry professionals who respected his reputation for authentic toughness. "Charlie," Sammy said pleasantly, "I couldn't help but overhear your analysis of authentic danger versus entertainment capability. It sounds like you've had some serious real-world experience that most performers haven't encountered." Bronson smiled grimly, recognizing that his expertise in genuine violence had been properly acknowledged by someone who understood the distinction between authentic and simulated toughness. "I have," Bronson replied with quiet intensity. "The thing that separates real tough guys from entertainers is experience with genuine violence in situations where acting technique isn't enough. Most people in this business have never had their authentic capability tested by people who weren't performing." Sammy nodded thoughtfully, as if receiving valuable educational information about the difference between real-world experience and entertainment industry approximation. "That's a sobering perspective," Sammy said. "Very authentic foundation for understanding genuine danger." He paused, maintaining his characteristic diplomatic politeness. "Though I wonder if there might be different definitions of what authentic intimidation actually looks like when it's operating at its highest levels." Bronson interpreted Sammy's response as evidence that the entertainer was interested in learning about genuine toughness from someone who possessed legitimate credentials in real-world violence and authentic danger. "There's really only one definition that matters," Bronson said with the conviction of someone who had never encountered capabilities that challenged his understanding of authentic menace. "The ability to intimidate people who are genuinely dangerous themselves. That's what separates authentic tough guys from performers who only intimidate other performers." Sammy's expression suggested that he found Bronson's analysis based on legitimate experience, but perhaps not complete in its understanding of what authentic capability could achieve. "So you're saying that genuine intimidation should be judged through effectiveness against other authentically dangerous people?" Sammy asked. "Exactly," Bronson confirmed. "Any performer can intimidate civilians or other entertainers through acting technique. But authentic danger means being able to handle yourself against people who have genuine experience with real violence." The assessment carried clear implications about Bronson's evaluation of Sammy's capabilities, that any intimidating results he might achieve would be effective only against people who weren't authentically dangerous themselves. Sammy considered Bronson's philosophy with the thoughtful attention he gave to most discussions about genuine capability and authentic experience. "That makes sense from a practical perspective," Sammy agreed. "Very realistic framework for distinguishing between different levels of authentic toughness." He maintained his pleasant expression while continuing. "Of course, that assumes that real-world violence represents the highest level of genuine capability, rather than just one approach among many." Bronson looked puzzled by the suggestion that there might be approaches to authentic intimidation that existed beyond legitimate street experience and real-world violence. "What do you mean?" "Well," Sammy said, "what if there are levels of authentic capability that transcend the need for violence entirely? What if genuine intimidation means making real-world experience irrelevant rather than applying it effectively?" Bronson's street-tested instincts engaged immediately, sensing that this conversation was moving toward territory where he could demonstrate the superiority of authentic danger through direct comparison with entertainment approximation. "Are you suggesting that performance technique can intimidate someone with genuine experience in real violence?" Bronson asked, his voice carrying the quiet menace that had made him famous for portraying authentically dangerous characters. "I'm suggesting we might want to test our different definitions of authentic intimidation under practical conditions," Sammy replied with characteristic diplomatic politeness. The suggestion created immediate tension among the assembled studio personnel, who recognized that they were about to witness either a confirmation of street toughness over entertainment capability or a discovery that would challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between real-world experience and authentic intimidation. Bronson was grimly satisfied by the prospect of demonstrating genuine danger in front of an audience that included several influential industry professionals who needed to understand the difference between authentic and simulated toughness. "What kind of test?" Bronson asked, though he was already confident that real-world experience would prove superior to whatever entertainment approach Sammy might attempt. "Simple demonstration," Sammy said. "Since you mentioned the importance of intimidating genuinely dangerous people, maybe we should see which approach produces more authentic intimidation." Word of the impromptu challenge spread quickly through the soundstage, and within minutes, a substantial crowd had gathered to witness what most assumed would be an educational demonstration of street toughness proving superior to entertainment technique. A technical coordinator appeared with specialized equipment that had been prepared for action sequences in various productions. Bronson immediately began demonstrating the kind of authentic menace that had made him legendary among people who understood genuine danger and real-world violence. Authentic intimidation requires understanding how genuine violence actually works. Bronson explained to the assembled observers as he prepared to demonstrate his legitimate capabilities. Most performers approach this theatrically and hope acting technique will produce adequate results, but real intimidation requires authentic experience with genuine danger. Sammy watched Bronson's preparation with polite interest, but made no move to demonstrate similar menace or establish comparable intimidation. He remained in his characteristic relaxed posture, looking like someone attending an educational demonstration rather than preparing to participate in serious competition. Bronson's preparation was minimal, but genuinely threatening. His approach wasn't based on systematic technique, but on authentic capability that had been developed through real-world experience with situations where genuine intimidation was required for survival. "The difference between real toughness and entertainment toughness," Bronson continued, "is that authentic danger comes from experience with genuine violence, while performance approaches rely on theatrical approximation that can't achieve comparable intimidation against people who understand real menace." Sammy accepted standard equipment from the technical coordinator and adjusted it with casual attention, as if he were putting on regular accessories rather than preparing specialized equipment for competitive demonstration of different approaches to authentic intimidation. "Aren't you going to establish appropriate menace?" Bronson asked, noting Sammy's apparent lack of intimidating preparation. "I think it'll work out," Sammy replied, checking the time on his watch with the same casual attention he gave to most routine activities. Bronson looked at Sammy's relaxed approach to what he considered serious demonstration of authentic capability with the expression of someone who was beginning to understand that this would be more educational than competitive. An MGM assistant director volunteered to oversee the demonstration, setting up professional timing equipment and establishing rules that would ensure objective measurement of street toughness versus entertainment technique. "Standard quick draw," the assistant director announced. "Authentic danger against performance capability. We'll see which approach produces more genuine intimidation." "Ready?" the assistant director called. Bronson took his position with the kind of quiet menace that came from authentic experience with real violence. His stance wasn't systematically calculated, but genuinely threatening, reflecting years of real-world situations that had required authentic intimidation rather than theatrical approximation. Sammy remained in his characteristic casual posture, showing no signs of authentic menace or genuine intimidation. His approach suggested someone who was participating in a friendly demonstration rather than serious competition involving authentic danger. "Draw!" the assistant director commanded. What happened next created one of the most traumatic moments in MGM Studios' history, and established a new understanding of what authentic intimidation looked like when it operated beyond the boundaries of real-world experience and entered territory that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of genuine danger itself. Bronson's draw was authentically threatening, genuinely intimidating, and executed with the kind of real menace that demonstrated everything street experience and legitimate toughness could achieve when applied by someone with authentic credentials in actual violence. But Sammy Davis Jr. had already drawn, aimed, fired, and holstered his weapon, while simultaneously lighting a cigarette and straightening his cufflinks, all in 0.10 seconds that belonged in the realm of supernatural capability rather than human achievement, accomplished with such casual precision that he appeared to be demonstrating something that existed beyond violence entirely. Bronson stood frozen, his weapon only partially drawn, staring at Sammy with the expression of someone whose understanding of danger, violence, and authentic intimidation had just been obliterated by evidence that genuine capability could transcend real-world experience entirely and operate according to principles that exceeded human understanding. The assembled crowd remained silent for nearly 3 minutes, trying to process what they had witnessed. Several stunt coordinators actually checked their timing equipment multiple times, thinking the measurements had to reflect some kind of systematic error. Bronson was the first to speak, and his words carried the bewilderment of someone whose street-tested worldview had just encountered something that challenged every principle of authentic danger he understood. "That's not possible, according to real-world experience," Bronson said, his voice carrying a tremor that betrayed genuine fear for the first time in his adult life. "The preparation time, the authentic menace, the genuine intimidation, none of that supports what I just witnessed." Sammy took a contemplative drag from his freshly lit cigarette and looked at Bronson with the patient expression of someone who had just provided a lesson in the difference between authentic danger and transcendent capability. "Different approach," Sammy said with his characteristic understatement, but Bronson's street-trained mind was struggling to process the implications of what had happened from both practical and psychological perspectives. "Show me that again," Bronson demanded, his authentic curiosity overwhelming his personal trauma. "I need to understand what kind of capability you're applying." The second demonstration was even more traumatizing. 0.09 seconds of precision that exceeded anything in Bronson's real-world experience, accomplished while Sammy maintained casual conversation with the director about weekend plans and completely ignored the supposedly serious business of authentic intimidation. Bronson attempted his own follow-up draw, applying maximum street-tested menace and authentic intimidation. But the more intensely he focused on genuine danger, the more his performance looked inadequate compared to what Sammy had demonstrated. "I don't understand," Bronson said finally, his voice carrying the confusion of someone whose street expertise had been revealed as irrelevant to authentic capability that operated beyond real-world violence. "Everything I know about genuine danger, authentic intimidation, and real-world violence says that what you're doing shouldn't be achievable without legitimate experience." Sammy's explanation revealed not just superior capability, but access to authenticity that existed outside Bronson's entire framework for understanding danger and violence based on street experience. "Charlie, you've approached intimidation through authentic experience," Sammy said, his tone carrying genuine respect for Bronson's legitimate toughness. "You've survived genuine violence, handled real danger, and developed authentic capability through situations that tested your actual toughness. That's impressive real-world experience." He gestured toward Bronson's genuinely threatening approach and authentic street credentials. "But I approached intimidation like a natural force, not by experiencing it through violence, but by becoming something that makes violence irrelevant." Bronson listened with the fascination of someone discovering that his area of authentic expertise contained dimensions that existed beyond street experience entirely. "When capability becomes transcendent enough," Sammy continued, "real-world experience actually becomes counterproductive. The authenticity operates best when it's beyond the need for violence rather than when it's based on genuine experience with violence." The explanation was philosophically devastating for Bronson, who was beginning to understand that his street-tested approach represented not the pinnacle of authentic danger, but limitation compared to capability that transcended real-world violence entirely. "You're saying that my authentic experience with genuine violence actually limits my understanding of real intimidation?" Bronson asked, his voice carrying the horror of someone whose street-tested life's experience had just been revealed as fundamentally incomplete. "I'm saying that different levels of authenticity exist beyond real-world experience," Sammy replied diplomatically, "but the highest levels might be about transcending the need for violence, rather than mastering it through authentic experience." Bronson stood quietly for several minutes, trying to process the implications of what he had witnessed and learned. His reputation as Hollywood's most legitimately dangerous performer had just encountered evidence that street experience might represent limitations rather than advantages when it came to authentic capability that operated beyond real-world violence. The conversation that followed revealed the depth of Bronson's psychological trauma and his struggle to understand how everything he had believed about authentic danger and genuine intimidation could have been so fundamentally incomplete. "Sammy," Bronson said finally, his voice carrying a vulnerability that was completely uncharacteristic for Hollywood's most authentically tough performer. "Yeah, Charlie? I think I need to reconsider what authentic danger actually means," Bronson said. "Because what you just demonstrated suggests that real intimidation operates beyond street experience entirely." Sammy accepted the acknowledgement with characteristic grace. "Different approaches work for different people, Charlie. Street experience produces genuine understanding and authentic results. It's just that some capabilities might exist beyond real-world violence entirely." But Bronson's street-tested ego was struggling to accommodate the revelation that his celebrated authentic experience represented intermediate-level capability compared to mastery that transcended real-world violence entirely. The psychological impact of having his street-tested worldview so completely challenged created trauma that would influence his approach to toughness for the rest of his career. Over the following years, Bronson's approach to his roles became notably less reliant on authentic intimidation and more focused on psychological complexity. Industry insiders observed that his encounter with Sammy had taught him the limitations of street experience when it came to authentic capability that operated beyond real-world violence. "Charlie was never quite the same after that day," noted one veteran stunt coordinator. "He was still tough, still dangerous, still authentic. But he stopped believing that street experience was the highest form of genuine capability, and that actually made his performances more mysteriously threatening." The incident became legendary among entertainment professionals as an example of how transcendent capability could redefine understanding of authentic danger, without diminishing the value of street experience for those still developing within real-world limitations. Years later, when Bronson was asked about the most challenging moment of his career, he would often reference that afternoon at MGM as the day he learned the difference between being dangerous and encountering something that existed beyond danger entirely. "Sammy taught me that the highest level of authentic intimidation is about transcending the need for violence," Bronson explained during a rare interview in the 1980s. "I had been trying to perfect my street-tested approach to everything, but he showed me that real capability makes violence irrelevant." The 0.10 seconds had lasted only an instant, but the psychological transformation it created would last for decades, proving that sometimes the most valuable education comes from having your street-tested certainties challenged by someone whose capability operates according to principles that exceed real-world experience entirely. And in Hollywood, where authentic toughness was often more valued than entertainment capability, Bronson's willingness to acknowledge transcendent mastery and learn from it actually enhanced his reputation as a thoughtful performer rather than damaging his credibility as a legitimately dangerous actor. Charles Bronson had entered that soundstage as Hollywood's most authentically dangerous performer, but he left understanding that real intimidation wasn't about mastering street violence. It was about developing capability that made authentic danger irrelevant to transcendent achievement.